not.
I've always been.
No, I was asking if you heard from him.
I've been, I live both. Country.
Call to order the regular planning commission for Tuesday, November the 8th. We do have a quorum, and we'd like to start out by doing our flag salute. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bring this back.
Okay, the first thing we have on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from October the 11th. Take a motion to,
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from October 11th, 2022.
I'll second.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Schiff,
Yes.
would you abstain?
you abstained.
Abstain.
Thank you. Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Spriggs,
Yes?
motion passed.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is to elect a chairman and vice chairman. I will volunteer to take the chairman's spot again. If anybody else is interested, you're more than welcome to speak up, and if not, then I guess we have to vote on that. Or do we have to open it first?
That's a new one on me.
I don't remember from last time.
Second. I'll second.
Okay?
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Schiff,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Plumtree, oh, sorry, Spriggs.
Yes?
Okay, motion passed.
And I'd like to nominate Mr. Doug Johnson to take the vice chairman spot again if he's willing.
Yes. Second? Or can I second that?
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Schiff,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Spriggs,
Yes.
motion passed.
Condolences to you both.
Thank you. Since they pulled, should we let people know that if they're here for item number 6, then they got pulled? They did get pulled. Yeah, that's one.
I'm just gonna make that announcement.
Okay, if anybody is here for item number 6, the public hearing on the hookah bar and lounge, I just let you know that that application was pulled, so that way you don't have to stay through the whole thing. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. So just so you know, they have pulled their application, so that's no longer on the agenda tonight. So that way you don't have to wait until that item comes up.
It also means you would have gotten a notice that there was also going to be a public hearing next week at City Council. It's not being heard at the commission. It cannot go to the council. So you don't have to be here next week.
Can they refile this application, or?
Anybody can file an application. There'd be a new application fee and new notices would go out. But you would, if that does happen, you would get a new round of notices.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming out tonight.
I'm glad people are coming down.
Nobody wanted to hook a bar.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is use to subject review, discussion and possible action to make recommendation to the city council for approval or disapproval concerning a type B home occupation landscape business located at 6,000 Northwest 60th Street, 4 Acres, Oklahoma, with the applicant being Carlos Velasco Diaz.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is here and he has a translator with him.
Okay. I'll take a motion to go ahead and open it for public hearing.
Move to open.
Second.
Adams,
Yes.
Warr,
Yes.
Schiff,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, Mr. Diaz, would you and your translator like to come up and tell us what you're planning on doing? Yes, if you could come up here.
If you wouldn't
And-
mind using the mic and just introduce yourself and introduce Mr. Diaz, just so it records it and it helps him with the minutes.
Okay. My name is Pedro Martinez. I'm gonna be translating for him. He's Carlos. So I guess he's got a business at his house, and he says he keeps his trucks, his personal stuff in his house. That nothing's on the streets. But he says that he's got another place, another house that he's gonna be buying. And I think he closes on December 10th, I think. So he'll be moving out of there in case, just for, if you guys have a problem with staying the trucks in there, he's gonna be leaving pretty soon.
So probably the most important question, where is the other house, the new house in Warr Acres or outside?
No, it's a Jones. In Jones.
Jones. I'm suspecting, but I don't know, are we here tonight because he's been running a business and then code enforcement came?
I had a complaint.
Okay.
It was brought to our attention by a councilman. She went out there and took pictures of it, and that's how it proceeded this far.
So, once he moves, what will happen with this house? Will he sell it? Will it be a rent house? What's the,
He said he's gonna rent it.
okay. So I guess the question for the commission is, you've got an application for a use that here in a month would no longer, if you were to approve it and the council were to approve it, it would be approval of a use that would no longer be used a month from now. But we also have the issue of over the next month, if it weren't approved, then you've got a violation of the code for the next month. So I guess the question is, do you want to entertain a use that would only be for 1 month or not? And we could dig into the details, and if you approve it, then it could in the future become a different type of home occupation, but.
But if we do approve it to go forward to the city council, then if he changes his mind, then it's already approved, is that correct?
Well, if the council were to approve it.
Right.
Right. But it would also, the use flows with the property, not with the individual that owns the property or is renting the property. So when you approve a property, it can change over to somebody else and they can continue that use. So that's where over the years I've cautioned commissioners from getting too far in the weeds on a particular way that a person's going to use it, because once you approve the use, somebody else could either buy the business, buy the home, and change the way they're using it. And unless you attach stipulations or limitations, they're not bound by the idea that the person had that came before you before. So, Cheryl, what, if anything, would be the course of action if this was not approved and he's moving in December?
I only had the one complaint, and I did speak to the homeowner, and he understood that the complaint was in the morning when the school bus traffic was going around, that it was hard to get through there. And he mentioned he could park in his backyard, or he was, so if his equipment currently isn't posing a traffic, barricade or, any problems in the morning. and
The complaints would go away.
Yeah, he's moving, I mean.
The code violation wouldn't go away, but the complaints would go away.
I did not write a ticket, I didn't even get to the letter part because he came out when I was taking pictures, and I mentioned to him what was going on, why I was taking pictures, and told him that he would need to come in and apply to get a type B business occupation license, and so he did. He came in like right that day, I think. So I personally, I don't have an issue with it unless somebody else has an issue with it. But it seems like if it's going away pretty quickly in December.
All right, so, Mr. Diaz, our ordinances, like any zoning ordinance, provide that we have zoning, which means that property is supposed to be used for a particular type of purposes. In this case, it's residential. There are circumstances under which you can operate a business out of residential. There are some that are just permitted, and then some that have to come before us. The long and the short of it is, from what I'm seeing in the packet, from what Cheryl said, this definitely sounds like an occupation that would have to come before us. Since you are planning on moving it within the next month, and it sounds like the things that were garnering complaints from residents might have taken care of themselves, you've really got two options here. You can move forward with your application, or you can pull your application or ask us to table it, and as long as you take care of business and don't, which is a bad choice of words, as long as you're not doing anything that would garner a citizen complaint, we can probably hold for a month on enforcing, bringing you for enforcement on the home occupation violation if you're planning on relocating it outside the city anyways. We've given that kind of grace to people in the past who need some time to move their stuff. So I guess the question to you is, how do you want to proceed? Do you want to move forward with asking the city to approve it when you're leaving in a month, or do you want to ask them, the commission, to table it for a month, at which point in time you'll probably have already moved it and it'll become moot?
Sorry, can you repeat the second part? It was a little long.
Sure. Essentially, we can you can move forward with asking that this be approved, knowing that you're asking for approval of something that in a month you'll stop using. Or, even though it's a code violation, we can give you some grace on getting it moved so long as you are no longer disturbing the neighbors and property owners around it. We can, what's called, table this, which is basically take your application and push it to our next month's meeting At which point in time, by the time of the next month, he'll have moved and the application will be what we call moot, no longer something that needs to be decided.
Dice que si quieres que hagan la aplicación, o como si quieres como que hagan como la junta a la internet, te están dando como si ese chance para que en el tiempo ese que pase, ya va a estar muy bien. Así mientras que no pase como, para que no se, mientras no se quiten todavía. Entonces, para que ese chance.
No, él es que el 10 es cuando me llamo, que de todas maneras no. O sea que si no dan tiempo.
He says since he's moving the 10th, so if you guys can kind of push it until he moves, he's gonna on this time he's gonna try to do his best not to be on the way on anybody, but he's gonna be moving pretty soon. So if you guys can do that.
It sounds like you understand what the code enforcer would get calls on and are trying to take care of that. So, Mr. Chairman, it's at the discretion of the commission. My recommendation, though, based on the applicant's statement, would be that you consider a motion to table this to your next regular meeting, at which point it may become moot.
Okay, I'll take a motion to table it until the next meeting.
We need to close the public hearing first.
That is an excellent idea that I'm usually the one that would say.
So
I move to close the hearing.
I will second.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Schiff,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
motion passed.
I guess I'll make a motion to table this until the next meeting in December.
I'll second it.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Schiff,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
motion passed.
Mr. Diaz, the only thing I'd ask, just as a courtesy to City Hall staff, is if you have moved everything and have acquired the new property, the next meeting is on the 13th of December. If everything's gone through and you've moved everything, if you would just let the folks at City Hall know so that they can let the commission know before their meeting that the item's moved.
Dice que la siguiente cuarta va a ser el día 13, que más cuando muevas todas tus cosas, que nomás les hagas saber para que todo.
Acá en la oficina.
You-
Yeah, he's gonna let you guys know whenever we move everything.
You may have been told that you would need to be here next week for the city council meeting. The city council wouldn't be able to take action on this anyway, since the commission hasn't sent anything to them. It'll be on the council agenda only so that the council can table their item as well to the December meeting, so you do not need to appear at city council next week.
Dice que van a ponerlo en la agenda y eso, pero que no tienes que va a estar. Okay.
You're welcome to stay, but you don't have to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is subject to review, discussion, and possible action to make a recommendation to the city council concerning a medical marijuana dispensary located at 3701 North MacArthur in Warr Acres. Business name is LA2 Dispensary LLC. Applicant is Luis Castillo Mercado.
Hi,
Hold on a second, sir.
I'm sorry.
Take a motion to go ahead and open for public discussion.
I move to open.
A second.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yep.
Schiff,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
motion passed.
Okay, sir, if you would, go ahead and state your name.
Luis Castillo Machado.
Okay. And if you would, go ahead and tell us about your application that you have.
Yeah, I already have existing license. I'm just trying to move it to the location that you just mentioned.
Okay,
Where are you currently operating out of?
It's not operated. I just got the license about a month ago.
What was the address that you'd applied for the license? Where were you originally going to locate?
It's in Sayre, I don't remember on top, but it's in the documents that I submit to the city.
Okay.
Yeah, the address is 11818 East 1210 Road, Sayre, Oklahoma.
So the commission knows my understanding, I could be wrong on this, but my understanding is there's currently a moratorium at the state level on the issuance of new business licenses, but existing licenses would continue and could be renewed. And so since he obtained a license before the state-imposed moratorium, he's got a license to engage in business. It would just be a relocation of business, albeit one that hadn't opened yet, but had already been licensed. Sir, I'll start off just based on conversation with the vice chair as we were getting started. The application, you had to apply for the address, which obviously is a very large piece of property. Are you only applying to use those, what was it, 2 units?
I think it's unit 5.
Two units. I believe it's E and F.
E and F, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they call it something else on here. Retail 5 and retail 6.
All right, so in the past, the commission, we would have somebody here on the commission who would ask you to tell the commission what your operation's going to look like.
All right, I already have an existing dispensary at the south side where Morello is located too. And when they were about to open this shopping center, they invited me and they asked me if I wanted to open another one there, and that's how I'm here. I'm currently open 24/7 in there, in that location. Honestly, at this time, I don't know exactly. We're probably just gonna open, I don't know, from 8 to 9 at the beginning and see how business is going, and then we might extend the hours after that.
So you say you currently have a dispensary working out of Morello's on the south side?
Yes,
Okay.
And that's a separate OMMA license.
it's a different license,
Different
yes.
license, okay.
Yes,
I
it's
was
called,
just trying to clear
it's
that
called
up
LA2K LLC, and this is LA2K LLC, LA2K Dispensary LLC.
Okay, gotcha. And so your hours you're talking about here at this location are going to be till what time at night?
I haven't decided exactly yet. I don't know if I need to decide in order to get approved, but at the beginning, I'm probably thinking somewhere around 9 in the morning, maybe to 10, 11, somewhere around that time.
Has the construction been finished there at the old Bifreless to where they've got it all separated out?
Yes, Morello is currently remodeling the unit, so I have talked to the inspector, Mike, and he told me that it will be okay just to open some windows and doors just to go from one unit to another.
Okay. Mike, I guess you've been through here and seen everything and looks up to par with what
It's
they
coming
need.
along, it's not open, they don't have a CO for nothing, they're gonna open the grocery part of it first.
Okay.
And then the part that he's in is gonna have some event centers and the dispensary in that side. They have not finished that yet. In fact, that's gonna be later on after the grocery store. So it will be, they're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I've been watching along. It looks nice over there. Do you have a proposed start date or opening date that they've kind of given you the potential to have?
I'm estimating that if the city council approve it, well, if you approve it today and the city council approve it next week, that I will start ordering some bulletproof material that we normally use for these locations. And I would probably think at the end of January, beginning of February.
Okay.
And besides, it take a little time to transfer the license with OMMA.
Gotcha.
Just so there's no assumptions, am I looking at the site plan correctly that these would be units that are facing MacArthur?
Yes.
Okay.
I do believe that all the units are facing MacArthur.
And there'd be part of the building behind you, part of the building to your left, part of the building to your right, and the parking lot in front. You're not in the corner or...
We're not in the corner. Behind, I believe there's an event center behind the 2 units.
And the reason I was asking that is mostly for, when we're talking about these uses on review, one of the main things that we're looking at is the impact, potential impact on neighboring properties around. Sometimes if this were located on the corner of a residential street, there'd be some different concerns about residential properties right behind it. But if I'm understanding the site plan correctly, you'd essentially have the rest of that commercial building surrounding your dispensary.
If you were to be standing in front of the building, it will be the 2 units to the right, almost to the corner.
And out of curiosity, I mean, what I'm seeing on the site plan is 2 units that are currently divided with a wall. Are you planning on taking the wall down to merge the units, or?
I'm only trying to open a door and 3 windows.
Yeah, that's got that right here. That's what he was talking about with Mike. Got a door and 3 windows here. It's merged between the 2. So, and then this would be,
So would essentially one of them be open to the public and the other side would be for
For the
staff and
for the employees and staff, yeah, to be.
and it should be these 2 right here.
And parking, I'm assuming is, well, I don't want to assume, is there part of your, I'm assuming you're leasing these units. And does that include the right to access and have parking there in the parking lot?
That's correct.
And have full security systems out there and all that? Keep an eye on things?
The one in the south side?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess you plan to do that here as well?
Yeah, the same thing, yes.
Okay.
Has this gone to code review at all? Have you had anybody look at this to see if it meets code and everything yet?
I have talked to Mike, and he said that no, I'm sorry, Mike, the inspector.
They haven't started working on it yet. He's waiting for approval before he does any remodeling and everything else. But we'll make sure it's up to code. So far, everything's been up to code. The grocery part of it, like I said, is going to proceed first, and then that side is going to proceed. And they got other stuff on that side. They just divided that whole building in half, basically.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
This new metal door, is it an overhead door, or is that an egress door?
The way it is 2 entries right now, and for security reason, we're trying to block 1 entrance and just leave 1. And on 1 unit, we have all the product, right? And then in the other unit where the public have access is basically just little displays and just for them to see it. But everything is secure in this bulletproof unit that we're gonna have.
Okay. Thanks.
Do we have any other questions?
I don't, I think we're good. We're gonna block that off and have the 1 entrance, and then,
Okay, we don't have any other questions. Do we have anybody here from the public that wants to speak to this item on the agenda? Okay,
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Adams?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Downs?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes?
Briggs?
yes.
Motion passed.
Mr. Mayor, you're hiding over there in the corner, but any indication on what the hours might be for the grocery store that's going in there?
I don't have that yet, it's probably gonna be like 9 o'clock at night, one of them is.
Chairman, from a staff perspective, and I know Mark will speak up if he disagrees, meets the definite requirements of the code. It's on review precisely because there's certain kind of businesses that, depending on where they're located within a particular zoning district, could have adverse impacts on adjacent properties, especially residential properties. This is probably one of the more unique applications you'll see because it's going to be part of a larger shopping center and it's going to be completely surrounded by other commercial units within the same property. It's got ample parking, and so if ever there was an application that does not appear from the face of the application to have a potential for adverse impact on the adjacent properties outside of this very large piece of property, I think you've got it before you.
And I might add that the properties to the west have already been zoned C4 as well. So they were moved from residential or multifamily residential. So that entire block behind there.
Is the one house,
There is one house.
There's
that
one
is-
house behind
We
it.
have one R1 out of,
that little
Yes.
sliver right there?
And
yes,
right across the street is another dispensary.
yes. But it is C4. So.
Yes, it's Seaport.
So, Mr. Chairman, at this point, you would be looking for a motion to make a recommendation of either approval or denial to the city council.
Okay, I am looking for a motion for either approval or denial to the city council.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Schiff,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Spriggs,
Yes.
approved.
Next week, 6 o'clock, not 7 o'clock, right here Tuesday. You need to be here for that. If you don't appear, application's deemed withdrawn, so make sure that you're here or send somebody in your place. See you next week. Like the last person, you're welcome to stay. You don't have to leave, but you're welcome to if you want to.
Okay, next item on the agenda is use subject to review, discussion, and possible action to make a recommendation to the city council concerning eating or drinking establishments, review use, beer, tavern, nightclub or bar, place of business on whose premises the dispensing of beverages occurs, which are consumed in whole or in part of alcoholic beverages containing more than 3.2% alcohol for consumption on site, is the primary activity where the serving and selling of food items is secondary or limited activity, accounting for less than 50% of the annual combined total food and beverage sales, and where live and pre-recorded music and/or other entertainment media and facilities such as dancing are provided for customers. The location of this is the OK Culture Lounge and Patio Bar, LLC, at 5708 Northwest Expressway in Warr Acres, and the applicant shows to be Jenny Richardson.
And if the minutes can reflect, applicant is here.
If I may introduce the applicant, my name is Justin Williams. I'm counsel for the applicant.
Okay.
And for OK Lounge, and Jenny Richardson is the manager of that company.
Okay. So first we'll have to take a motion to go ahead and open this for the public.
I move to open.
A second.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Schiff,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Spriggs,
Yes. Okay, sir, before we get started, I'd like to hear from the staff on this because this has been a property that has been brought up before us before. And I think they would like to maybe bring you up to speed on what has happened in the past. And we can go start with that.
Well, and actually, before we get into that, just out of curiosity, I'm assuming that have you acquired the previous owner's business, or it was a different applicant that came before us the last time and now it's a new LLC, new people? How did we get to that point?
So ultimately, Your Honor, here I am.
You just elevated me.
I know, man, there you go. Don't do that. I do want to say, it's pretty cool that everyone is here on election day. You guys care more about civic government than, your average citizen, and yet here you are, so it's pretty cool. You deserve that respect. The actual owner has always been the same gentleman. His name is Grover Burnett. He lives in California originally, and he's appointed a manager that was named Ricardo Weatherborn. And Ricardo had brought this application before the city council in the past. That gentleman is no longer affiliated with the company at all. He's truly been terminated, for lack of a better word, and no longer has any rights or role within the company. Jenny Richardson has replaced that gentleman, and we're trying to correct what I contend to be some of the wrongs and just confusion generated by the prior management.
And Mark, just because I was sitting at home trying to stream it and couldn't stream it because my wife had COVID and I didn't know if I did, was the Ricardo guy the one that appeared the last time?
He was the one representing as the applicant.
Okay. All right, so there were some things that came up that we brought up last time, we're gonna bring up this time, but I wanted to get that clarified as to whether or not this was new ownership group or just a change, but within the same ownership group.
Right.
So
Same
you
ownership,
guys have
just new
clarified that.
manager.
Right. And I,
Hey, Mike, can I ask one
yes.
question first?
Yes, sir.
You said Mr. Grover Burnett owns it. Does he live 100% of the time in California?
Not entirely. I would not say 100% of the time, but
Okay.
he primarily lives in California, though.
Does he have a residence here in Oklahoma?
He does, but again, I would say that he spends more of his time in California, though. Yes.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that, Mike.
Yes, on the health department application, it does have Grover Burnett II at 12825 Green Valley Drive. So that would be the Oklahoma City residence. Okay. I want to qualify and apologize up front because it appears that you probably are not aware of what all was required at the last application. We went through and identified, and I'm not going to go into all details, but I'll just summarize real quickly. There were 14 points that the previous applicant representative was supposed to bring back to this commission in order for us to sort through some of the issues that we could see that were being resolved. I did notice that in your work plan, you discussed that the kitchen shall be subleased, and the new hours of the kitchen will be, and you state those hours, and that kind of goes to several of these points, because it does. We were not able to sort through the application, the medical marijuana license for the dispensary and for the other activities as far as the restaurant and bar based on who was holding it. The county assessor shows that TB Holdings LLC owns the property. There was a Secretary of State listing that showed two active corporations, LA Finest Dispensary LLC and LA Finest Street Cuisine and Patio Bar LLC. What was unclear is how did these corporations all interrelate and where were leases to show if they were not tied together in ownership. And then the question was, well, are both corporations going to then operate the business, which was LA Finest Dispensary LLC and LA Finest Street Cuisine and Patio Bar? That was not made clear. And then does TB Holdings have any role other than being the corporation that is granting the lease? And then does it allow one entity to sublease to another entity? These were all being presented to us as situations. As to control of the premises, is there common control between the dispensary and the Street Cuisine and Patio Bar LLC? That pretty much covers all of the corporate issues. Then what we were looking at is the issue of main entrances for the parking lot for each business. And is there a way for a customer of one of the corporations with one of the licenses to directly access the area of the other corporation? And that presented a potential issue between the medical marijuana dispensary law and the license and the restaurant/bar. It was not clear if for the layout on 5708 on that property, if the consuming marijuana by smoking or vaping is allowed in those areas along with alcohol. That was not made clear as far as where those boundaries were. Then we identified, Mr. Love identified some issues related to Section 310, 681, 518 of the state OMMA regulation, stating that no commercial licensee shall allow the consumption of alcohol or smoking or vaping of medical marijuana or medical marijuana products on the licensed premises, except if that licensed premise is a residence, a commercial licensee shall only be prohibited from consuming alcohol or vaping or of medical marijuana in the licensed premises. So that presented a whole problem in how the application was presented and that was in, I'm sorry, it was in August or July of 22. Who is the true applicant? And so I guess right now today, there's a listing of Oklahoma City, OKC Culture Lounge and Patio Bar LLC is who's listed as under the tax commission, but then your health department application is under LA Street Cuisine, which is one of the original.
That's an old health department application. We have the updated one.
Okay.
From,
So then I guess then, are we back to then, is this application being brought forward by OKC Culture Lounge and Patio Bar?
yes, we're trying to change the name from LA Finest Street Cuisine.
Not just change the name, but change the company
Change
entirely.
the company
In other words,
entirely from previously mentioned.
dissolve LA Finest Street Cuisine, open OK Culture, and move forward with a clean slate without any of the prior applications.
And then does LA Finest Dispensary LLC remain?
It does. I can address a lot of those questions. I wanted to make sure you outlined
Okay,
all the main concerns, though.
then we had, we had some representations based on that there were commercial activities that were done outside of the hours from 8 to 11. There have been numerous complaints submitted to the police department and city hall alleging there have been noise complaints, noise violations. There were no citations issued. But there were numerous complaints from the adjacent properties. Then we had issues related, there was a host of issues related to the city ordinances and the building permit. It was unclear as to, there were projects that were done inside the building. They were then demolished after they were found by the building inspector to have been done without the permit. We're still not clear what all actually is remaining versus what's staying and whether or not it's been permitted. We have new plans, but we've not really been able to determine what really got built versus what's being done in the hand sketches versus the plans. So that's another issue, and then it does tie back to confirming that what got built outside of the building without a building permit needed to be removed, and then what was that separation going to be between the two different entities. That summarizes it.
That's a lot. I can address almost everything there, though, I hope, and that which I can't, I think that Ms. Richardson should be able to, so if it's okay with the council, I'll just jump into it. Is that acceptable?
Do you have anything to say before he starts?
We may have some follow-up questions, but
Yeah,
please.
of course. And we'll try to cut through it. At the core of this issue concerns a dispute between the owner of the business, Mr. Burnett, and his prior manager, Mr. Weatherbourne. I will represent to this council, and I represented to the Oklahoma County District Court Judge Richard Ogden, that some of those noise complaints were initiated by Ricardo Weatherbourne. He is attempting to interfere with the operations of this business, and he has for the last 6 or more months. There's actually an injunction entered against that gentleman that prevents him from, by the Oklahoma County District Judge, interfering with the operations of the business. And that's one of the reasons that a new company was created. We were trying to ensure that he does not go to a bank or someone else or code enforcement and say, I am an owner of LA Finest, or I'm a prior manager of LA Finest Street Cuisine and Bar, which he was. He was an appointed manager, and try to use that apparent authority to injure the company in some way, because he has had communications with the city before. So the new company was created. LA Finest Street Cuisine and Bar is being dissolved. We are in a literal active civil lawsuit with Mr. Weatherbourne concerning those actions, but you know, the work must go on. We need to open this business and continue to operate it in an open and forthcoming way, and so that's why we're here today. The company's retained counsel. We are trying to make sure that this is as transparent and open of a process as possible. No one's going to be calling the police on noise complaints. I believe that if the council were to speak to some representatives of the police department, they note that there was one specific incident where a noise complaint was received, and the police officer that responded to the call happened to be across the street at the very time taking lunch or having a bite in the parking lot on the other side of Northwest Expressway. Rolled his window down, couldn't hear anything, and showed up and still couldn't hear anything, and noticed that we have this injunction that says that Ricardo Weatherbourne is not permitted to interfere with operations of the business. Noted that the complainant was Ricardo Weatherbourne and moved on. So I apologize for this dispute, this private civil dispute, wasting anyone's time.
Well, and let me just tell you, just so that you know, it's very possible that Mr. Weatherbourne was calling in noise complaints. I can tell you that he was not the only one. In fact, I have heard for month after month after month after month after month, and I'm looking behind you because you've got some people behind you who live in the residences behind the business who will tell you that it was not just Mr. Weatherbourne who was claiming that there was a noise issue. There are numerous residents who've been coming to city council for quite a while. I don't know how it's been in the last few months, but I know for quite a while we were inundated with complaints about noise coming from this property, and specifically that, I mean, Mark kind of highlighted it,
Yeah.
that blend between the operations, and it definitely looked like the last application, not yours, but the last application was showing direct access between dispensary and bar lounge, which not only created a host of non-city legal issues, but also city issues as well. So there were quite a bit. I was never present for it because I don't live here, but there were enough residents that if you hear from one, then you hear from two, then you hear from an entire council room full.
In July, there were 8 persons representing that they had been involved in either noise complaints, and they dated back to 2020. And we verified that. So, I mean, it's been a 2 or 3 year ongoing.
Yeah, and I know that the neighbors, Shipley's Donuts were complaining before as well too, and I went and spoke with them, but our hours of operations aren't gonna be we're gonna close at 12 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. We're not gonna stay open until 2 a.m. and we don't have loud music. If anything, we might have a live band, but it might end at 10 p.m. But that's not an everyday thing.
It's my understanding that Mr. Weatherbourne actually made a representation to this council in some form or some application that he essentially had this vision for this business being a nightclub of some form. That is not something that Mr. Burnett ever desired or intended for, and that was part of the discord that grew between them, was a vision for what this business was. And that's why now, and I appreciate that the residents of the town are here, and you're going to have the opportunity too to make public comment. Mr. Weatherbourne's no longer with the company. He did have full control of the business for a long time. He was running it the way he wanted to run it. My client didn't like that, and so he's gone now. So we're here to try to actually make this move forward. The restaurant that is being, well, I'll get to the leasing situation, the corporate relationship, but the new restaurant coming in is called Beatbox. It's a vegan restaurant. I mean, this is not something that is like highlighting to a late night crowd. This is like vegan food options. It's a different vibe than a nightclub. This is an LA fine art. I thought it was interesting that the prior applicant was also an LA named cannabis operation, but so I guess there's competition in town. But regardless,
A little way south, but.
TB Holdings is the landlord. They have no other business relationship with the company. Their lease does permit them essentially a right to deny any sublet. I prepared personally the sublease with Beatbox, and Mr. Brown at TB Holdings is a signatory to the sublease. He did approve of the sublease, but apart from him being the landlord, he has no other relationship to the business.
So is this a sublease from the dispensary, like and maybe you can clarify this, does the dispensary LLC hold the lease for the property and is subleasing?
Yes, so there are two different distinct companies here, three if we include LA Finest Street Cuisine. The primary lease is with LA Finest Dispensary, and in that lease it specifically permitted the sublease of space to LA Finest Street Cuisine and Patio Bar. And now we are subletting that exact same space to the new company, OK Culture. So, well, although technically it's not even OK Culture, it's now Beatbox. The idea behind the property initially was not that it was going to be what it is now. We have since suited out the property. Whether all the proper filings were made with this council, with the planning commission, I can't speak to right now, but on our most recent site plans and in the vision of these companies, as well as our representations to own May, we have Suite A, which is the dispensary, and we have Suite B on the property, which is the restaurant and patio bar. And it is Suite B that we intend to open up this restaurant and bar.
Is Suite A the entirety of what is that, the east building on the structure?
That's correct.
And the reason I'm asking if it's the entirety is the last application, and I just want to make sure that the distinctions between what we had before and what we have now, the last application was essentially calling for the street cuisine business to essentially have most of the, what you call Suite A, the dispensary building, and the drawings really limited down the dispensary operations and then provide cross-access into this, Mark, lounge area that they'd built the bar in illegally without coming to us, and they'd renovated that area without coming to us.
So I think if the commissioners can look at, I'm looking at the first A201 drawing. So what I'm seeing here is on A201, where north is pointing down, it shows the existing dispensary and those walls with that door, which is significantly different than what was presented in the past, because there was a combination of a restaurant and a bar in a portion of that part of the building. And so am I clear that you're saying that is now Suite A?
That is Suite A. There is a door that goes from Suite A into the patio area, and there is a lounge area within Suite A over there near that door that enters onto the patio. And it's my understanding that there will be literal seating area, like a lounge on that part, but no alcohol, no alcohol will be permitted into that area. There's a literal, essentially a security guard that prevents anything except for food from Beatbox from entering into this lounge. If one were to try to bring alcohol into the actual building that houses the dispensary of Suite A, they would have to be told to finish their drink before they could come inside. Because Mr. Love is correct that state law does prevent you to have on-site medical marijuana consumption where you sell medical marijuana products, or alcohol consumption where you do. Now, just as the prior applicant indicated that he has 2 suites among like mini suites, I would contend that where you have properly suited out a larger commercial structure and there are separate properties, and the licensed premises for the medical marijuana dispensary is limited to only part of the commercial structure, such that they're not engaging in actual sales or storage or anything else on the rest of it, then that is not inappropriate. One example that was kind of notable of that was Relax Park. If any of the council members are familiar with this, it didn't end up operating for long, but it was a medical marijuana dispensary / bar / restaurant and food truck and concert venue right off like Western and I-40 near downtown Oklahoma City. They ran out of money and actually got shut down for code enforcement, but not because they weren't allowed to have a bar on the same premises as a dispensary. It was because they literally didn't pull the proper permits to construct walls and things in that building. But it is the case that these are two different companies, LA Finest Dispensary and OK Culture. There is going to be, should this special use permit be approved, there is going to be alcohol sales, but the only bar, the entire premises, is this one indicated by, on A201, I think it's like a white box right there in the middle of the outdoor patio area. One of the prior concerns or problems that Mr. Weatherbourne had was that he actually constructed a bar on the interior of the building in Suite A, and that was not approved by the permitting office or by the city. When my client, Mr. Burnett, actually visited the facility and saw this, he tore it down. So he literally ripped the entire bar out personally himself, and that, again, created discord amongst the two of them that's led to their falling out. But there is no bar inside. There will be no alcoholic beverages consumed. That would be improper and illegal. Similarly, there's no consumption outside. You cannot buy marijuana at the dispensary and then walk outside and consume it in these areas, even though they are, you know, there's cabanas and outdoor seating and areas like that that would otherwise be conducive for like a cannabis lounge. This is not a cannabis lounge. It's not being marketed as such. That's not the purpose here, because you cannot consume on the same premises that you have alcohol sales. So truly, the special use permit is just for this new company created to operate the bar to operate the bar. And it's intended to be an outdoor patio bar. And there will be a dispensary on the same commercial lot, but isolated to the interior structure.
And just because it took me a while to find it myself, and maybe the commissioners might be having trouble finding it as well, you mentioned that there'd be a door accessing from the restaurant, well, I'll call the restaurant side, into the dispensary. Is that essentially right here, looking into what's labeled as a vestibule, I can't even pronounce anything right now.
There,
Well-
the outside, there is an entrance to go into the lobby to the dispensary, and then there's another entrance to go straight to the patio, bar, and to the kitchen.
And see, that's where I'm, so this drawing, this A201 is updated.
Yes.
That's an updated site plan.
Uh-huh.
Then there's a kitchen hand drawing, which is, this is now,
I believe
I rejected that kitchen hand drawing.
Okay.
I stuck it in there, but I told her, that's what I told you you couldn't have.
but I
It's gotta,
understand you.
it's
Right,
gotta
but-
be
but-
more
but if you-
professional than hand drawn.
but over here on the right, you've got the existing kitchen. That's what that will be, right?
Yes. So there's an entrance right here.
Right, but see, what's confusing is, and here's the issue. This set that says permit set, these are from the original remodel and/or partly that was not followed. So these are in here, whereas you captured some of what was done on the outside, but then what Mr. Love is referring to is how this is all, this is not reflecting.
this shows a kitchen.
Yes.
This is actually.
Right, but what was originally requested for a permit that Mike rejected for not building it per the permit, and that's, I spoke to the architect that you had, and he stated he had had an update to the site plan for you, and that he was supposed to come in and try to as-built this, because I said, these permit sets are from, these are dated back from previous use, so this literally has to be updated, and/or the kitchen, if you're going to have,
Yeah, so
because the only bar diagram is this, which again is another hand drawing.
yeah, those aren't, and that's,
Well, at one time, they were putting the bar inside.
They
And
moved the bar
didn't-
inside.
They didn't get a permit for it, and I never did do any inspections on it, and I thought you guys tore it out. That's when I said this has to go to the planning commission, city council.
So then is this the bar?
The bar is outside.
The bar is outside, I believe.
So then this isn't a valid drawing either. Okay.
So it sounds like the applicant needs to actually prepare the kitchen as built. So if, just to help,
What, yes, certainly
on
what,
the same
you,
page
you,
initially.
you must have a site plan, which you do have. That was prepared by the architect on the very first page. That looks like that's now accurate. And it shows an outdoor bar. But you have no floor plan. Our problem is we don't understand what's going on in Suite A. We don't understand what's going on in the outside bar, other than, I guess it's open and you could walk in and look, but there's no drawing of that. And then there's no drawing for the kitchen to clearly delineate the uses and the separations.
so Suite B includes the building on the right of the drawings, on the right of the site plan, separate from where the dispensary is. That is where the kitchen is gonna be located, in Suite B exclusively. And as I mentioned.
So you're moving the kitchen from outside or wherever that to inside now?
No, the kitchen is gonna be outside, so you'll have
missed
to
it.
walk through the,
You have to walk out that door and go through the bar to the kitchen.
But this says an existing prep kitchen building 5,000 and some square feet.
Yeah, so it was a storage
yes.
building. Now it's the kitchen. It was a storage, now it's the kitchen. It's the other side of the awning, which is
Right.
to the west of the property.
That's correct.
But is that gonna be a kitchen or is that, okay. So then that gets back to, we don't have any drawings of that. What we're lacking is, this is a good start, but everything else in this permit set doesn't necessarily,
It's like a Frankenstein permit application. Many different
yeah.
versions. And we
Well,
apologize, we're not trying to confuse anyone
Yeah.
on this.
As an engineer and all, I wouldn't wanna like call it a Frankenstein, but yeah, I mean, it's just not, these are old. These are permit drawings that were previously submitted for something that was partially built this way. So this needs to not, this is not a proper submittal of a permit set.
So we can cure that. As you mentioned, we are working with an architect who, I actually hadn't had a specific conversation with him, but if he made representations, he was working on as-builts, then we can obtain the as-builts. Obviously, Mike is always welcome to come perform an inspection.
You had an architect, do you still have the same one? One of them was confused and said he might quit.
The original architect from the beginning that apparently did refuse to work for Mr. Weatherbone. So he quit the day before this application in July. He said he wasn't gonna work with him because he couldn't figure out what was. This architect said he's now working with the new applicant, and he said he went through the building and he was tasked with trying to as-built it. But he was trying to, he needed to work with you to figure out. I was trying to figure out, well, do you know what actually got built and what was permitted? And that's something that Mike and city staff are willing to work with that.
What got permitted was after the fact to begin with.
Yes.
The outside, the inside the kitchen, for that with the hood, everything else was after the fact.
So staff is willing to work with your architect to try to get this resolved. So,
We appreciate that. At the end of the day, to kind of cut through, because it sounds like we have some additional work we need to do to get the full permits up to code, or I should say, to get it done the right way. These are two different companies. They have two different point of sale systems. You asked about control. There is one owner. That owner is a manager of the companies. He has delegated the day-to-day business responsibilities to Ms. Richardson. Ms. Richardson is a manager of both companies. She will have like shift managers that will also work and manage the business as any company requires. But Ms. Richardson and Mr. Burnett are the sole managers of the company. They're managers of both companies. They have different bank accounts. They do have bank accounts though. There's no commingling of, even employees outside of the management. They have different payrolls. So common control, certainly, but entirely different business operations. And, you know, we're trying to really rebuild a lot of this stuff from the ground up, so. I wouldn't come in here and suggest otherwise when the police department's literally receiving calls from prior manager.
So I'm clear, we'll call them Suite A, Suite B, Suite A being the building that the dispensary's in, Suite B being the restaurant part. There is access from Suite B to Suite A?
There is.
And is it intended that portions of Suite A would be used for people to go sit down to eat, or, I mean, what's the purpose of the cross-access?
Just being able to eat.
Okay.
It's indoor, air conditioned.
And,
There's tables and chairs in there.
okay. And that's, I think on one of the drawings it listed would that be the eastern part of the building as being a product area. Is that going, what is that eastern part of the building? Is that going to be product for the dispensary, or is that entire area just going to have seating?
When you say the eastern, is
So
the larger building?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the long portion running.
This is what we're referring to here is, the only drawing we have is this representation.
Correct. That area has storage for the dispensary, it has the literal retail space that customers come to, including a lobby area for them. And correct me if I'm wrong, there's actually, the storage and sales space is isolated from the lobby. It's entirely separate, like locked room that has security, and you have to identify your medical card to get into it, or gain access to that. And then I think there's restrooms and some storage and office space.
The other question I had, and I thought I heard it, but I just want to make sure, the restaurant operation, obviously the dispensary can't allow on-site consumption. Is the restaurant area intending to allow on-site consumption of marijuana or just alcohol?
Alcohol, not marijuana. We're not legally allowed, even if we had wanted to sell
Does your
to sell marijuana where we are allowing on-site alcohol consumption, or vice versa.
Okay, but see, that's where the problem is with this right here. If this is the product area, but we know that they remodeled it and put some area for, but yet in the drawing, this says this is a door for checkout from the product area to go to a checkout to go to that.
That's
So
old, we'll need to get you.
that is fundamentally what is at issue here is everyone is asking the question of how are you not commingling the product area and the dispensary? Because this is tied together.
Part of the reason is that we're not actually allowing on-site marijuana consumption anywhere. This is not a place where you can consume medical marijuana on premises, because there are only two spaces, one where marijuana is sold, and thus you cannot consume there, and one where alcohol is sold, so you cannot consume marijuana there. Thus, there is not a permitted place to consume marijuana at all.
And that's the problem. There's not a drawing showing a separation between a seating area that doesn't exist here.
At one time, you didn't have a seating area. That was just open. You had kind of a museum back there.
Yeah,
Now you
it's
got
still
chairs and
just-
tables?
Just a table and chairs in there now. And so on that drawing, it shows that the dispensary or the product area is right by that exit door, and it's no longer there.
Okay.
So we can get current plans.
That gets back to the heart of this whole matter is, and why I was encouraged when I spoke to the architect, that he seemed to indicate that the new people involved wanted him to as-built what was there and what was going to change, so.
Yeah, alcohol consumption will not be in any part of the building, even a part where someone may eat
Suite
a
A.
sandwich.
Suite A.
Suite A.
Okay,
No
but Suite
alcohol.
B, you could have alcohol consumption.
That's right, that's the whole purpose of having the bar outside with outdoor cabanas and outdoor space.
What about
People want to
marijuana?
come
What
in.
about marijuana consumption in Suite B?
No, you cannot consume marijuana on premises.
Does your client operate the Instagram handle okculture_?
Yes.
Because I'm looking at a post from okculture_ November 1st, saying among other things, no OMMA card required and outdoor 420 friendly.
Yeah,
I
that's
will
inappropriate.
contact our marketing team about that.
And I mean, it's most of the feed is, I mean, the most recent post was, well, actually, this one looks like it's a pinned post from October 31st, was encouraging people to bring their rigs and come say hi with the hi elongated out with a puff of smoke after it. Post from October 29th, 420 friendly. Then post from, what is this, November 1st, which is advertising a cannabis social with a bunch of puff of smokes and no OMMA card and outdoor 420 friendly. I mean, it definitely appears that it's being advertised as a place that you would go to drink and smoke marijuana.
Yeah, I mean, I'm embarrassed to be in front of you as a member of the bar and saying that, and then you have it right there. The social media posts.
I'll give our vice chair credit.
Yeah.
He's the one who pointed me in that direction.
That is inappropriate. You cannot have on-site alcohol sales where you have medical marijuana consumption. I know that, the law says that, I will advise my client that. That's not the goal. That was not my understanding of the goal. So, and I think if the council were to approve the special use permit, they could even explicitly make that a condition of approval. I'm having a brain fart at the moment right now.
And
Exceptions, but
conditions, if it were going to be recommended for approval, I would anticipate some restrictions like that, and frankly, some that you listed in the site development plan in terms of the hours of operation, in particular because normally when a use on review comes before us, it's a hypothetical of what something's might look like, and so the commission's got to kind of rack its brain of how could things go wrong and how can we put things in place to protect the neighboring communities. In this case, the predecessor manager had already started up the operation, and so we've had real world experience at this property, at this location with this type of use, albeit I know you want to do it a little bit different, but we've got some real world experience at this location as to how things can go wrong and how it can adversely impact the adjacent neighborhood to the south. So those would be things that I anticipate that if the commission were going to recommend approval, it sounds like there's still some things that need to be done, so we may need to table it a month. But if it were going to make a recommendation, it would probably want to attach some of those restrictions on an approval.
yeah, I think that's appropriate.
All right, so Mark, from your standpoint, because there's still some things that may need to get flushed out here so that if we're going to have another meeting on this, we can at least flush these things out before that meeting. But just so that we don't lose track of it, from your standpoint, what needs to come to you, come to the commission before you could recommend that they take some sort of action?
I think we need to update all of the plans to accurately reflect what is existing and then depict what will be proposed.
So the current and then the future.
Right, and I'm not, while this body is not specifically requiring, you're not required to have a permit set for planning commission. However, in this instance, I think it would behoove you to have a permit set so that we can understand exactly, because there were so many things that have gone back and forth, that all that does is it just gets it in front of the building inspector early. So then that way we're looking at an existing plan and a permit to construct plan proposed, and clearly identifying these separations as we've discussed. I think from another application standpoint, we need to have it clearly filled out so that we know which entities are, and then if we've got, you know, the health, we got this tax, we've got another entity, so we need to have the right entity so that these can be.
The health department application
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
new LLC's name.
And all needs to
I have
match,
all of that
yes.
updated information.
And as to the first point Mark brought up, I think we can dispose of that here. As I understand, and tell me if I'm wrong, TB Holdings leased to the dispensary LLC, LA's Finest Dispensary LLC, with the right to sublease, subject to TB Holding vetoing it. TB Holding will be, and maybe I'm unclear on this, is it subleasing to the Oklahoma Culture, or is it going to sublease directly to a separate beatbox?
Candidly, both.
Okay. Okay. So that then addresses the lease issues.
That addresses that, and then that also addresses the state statute issue that you were talking about.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, while this will have to come back before the commission next month for the things that Mark referenced, there may still be some broader issues that the commission wants to try and flesh out with the applicant in advance of that. So now would be a good time. Better now than next month. And
Right.
let's talk about noise. Let's. Well, you're just a member of the public, and it is a public hearing. What's your temperature? I mean, we're in the public hearing, so.
Let's go ahead and hear from the public. Then we'll let the councilors ask questions and then close it out.
So if you guys just want to have a seat real quick and.
Thank you.
Well, I got one question. Are we gonna sell more food than booze or more booze than food?
More food than booze.
And do you guys, how can we prove that?
We can provide you sales reports.
Can you do that? I mean, just.
And
So the
There's a,
restaurant.
there's a difference in a bar than just a
Right, the
restaurant.
can, account for 90% of the sales, and the bar is like 10%.
And what happens when it gets cold? Are you guys going inside?
No, we'll just shut it down probably when it's the winter time, and get back up for March, April. I mean, there might be some people that wanna come outside,
Okay, I got two questions before the public comes up. Beatbox, do they currently have an operation that's in existence?
They do. They were originally in a food truck, and their customers have never had a brick and mortar or place to sit.
Bless you.
And so they wanted to have a place where their customers could sit.
And that's a food truck here in Oklahoma City then?
They
Okay.
were operating out of a ghost restaurant with Sunnyside Diner in I think, Midwest City for the last 6 months.
Okay. And the previous manager had outside speakers, I guess, in the cabanas, and that was where some of the noise complaints came from. Are you planning on maintaining?
No, those speakers are put up. We haven't brought the speakers out. We had a live band one day, but other than that, no, the speakers are just put up. I don't know if you guys have heard any loud music for the last few months, but it's been really quiet.
Okay. Anybody from the public like to speak to this? If so, come up, state your name, your address. And I think there's a sign-in sheet up there on the table.
Okay,
We had some communication issues last meeting.
okay.
Couldn't be picked up on the mic of people's names or their addresses.
All right, my name is Carrie Rice, and I live at, on 72nd Street between Comanche and MacArthur. Our main concern is the noise. Even though we're west, for some weird reason, the wind will carry. Even though the music has been a little bit lower, where some of my neighbors still can hear it. So I don't know, my question would be, how are you going to enforce that, the noise? If you're a manager and you have people on duty, how are you gonna say, well, it can't be over, are you gonna do a decibel system? Like it can't be over a certain amount, or?
Well, it's never been that loud since I've been there, because I want to keep it down. But I mean, we'll definitely control the music. We're not staying open late hours or any of that.
Right.
Um,
And we appreciate that. That was one of our big concerns before. It would go after midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that. On Friday and Saturday, we plan to close at midnight. If it gets slow, we'll close earlier, but we're not staying open until club hours. We don't plan on having big speakers out there or parties like they were before.
Okay. I don't know if there was anything else. There might be.
Okay?
So my name's Judy Myers. I live on 5805 Northwest 72nd Street. And I started recording when I heard noise. So I'll go as far as 6:17 at 10 p.m. I could hear it inside the house. at 6:30, June 30th, that is, at 10 p.m. I could hear it again inside my house and on my front porch. On July 2nd, at midnight, could hear music in my house. On July 7th, at 10 p.m., again, we could hear music. September 17th, October 1st, and October 22nd. I have recorded those dates as when I could hear that music inside my house.
Hi, how you guys doing? Mike Schmidt, 6008 Northwest 58th Terrace. The first question I have is, and instead of doing it next week or whenever, like we were talking about sorting out now, what is the subject to review on this property as it stands right now? Because I thought we only had a dispensary. We didn't allow alcohol.
The use before the commission is what they call Suite B, which is essentially outside that main building, the part to the west that's a little bit further removed from Northwest Highway. It is before us on a use which is sort of a mixed food and beverage, alcoholic beverage use.
So we did pass the alcohol as well.
That's what's before. That's what was
I
before.
mean, what's passed right now? I know the dispensary was passed, but nothing else is, right?
Correct.
So they've been serving alcohol this whole time.
They got a license from an attorney, OMMA attorney that we've had that does not work for the city no more, that told us to go ahead and issue a license.
But they don't have the use to review for alcohol
Well,
on that premises.
It's
even though they're
bar.
advertising for it. But we as an entity, the planning commission and the city council never passed for it to be a bar to sell alcohol.
It was a restaurant with less than 50% sales. It didn't have to come in front of the council.
Let me clarify here again. August 13th of 2019 is when the dispensary was approved.
Right, that's
Okay?
all I ever recall
And
approving
then
was a dispensary.
It was represented to city staff that they were going to have a restaurant with less than 50% alcohol sales.
But, so that doesn't have to come in front of any kind of board?
No, that does not. They can have a restaurant in C4.
Because,
and
you know,
it can sell.
So I'll just let you know,
alcohol.
I've been up there on a Friday night when we're having all these complaints. I'm a council member, so I went up there. And the whole thing, like, with having a wall, people were buying marijuana, going into the bar area outside, sitting down, smoking it, and drinking. There wasn't any food. So, to me, it was just a bar and people were smoking and doing everything else. I would like to see, between Suite A and Suite B, no door. It should be distinguished that this is Suite A, it's a dispensary, this is Suite B, it's a restaurant. Because people are still just gonna take it, go across, take their weed out, their pre-rolls, whatever they have, and smoke it inside. And that's what's been going on the entire time. This Grover Burnett manager, does he have a residence in Oklahoma?
Yes, as we mentioned.
But he's never here. But he has a residence in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Okay.
He lives here on occasion, but, I mean, no one's pretending like he lives here the majority of his time.
Well, no, I just know because you have to, 75% of the ownership has to be of a dispensary, has to be by an Oklahoma resident. So I'm asking if he's.
This is the current rule now. I'll speak to this really quickly if you allow.
That's fine, yeah. That was just my question. That's the last question I had, but that was the last question.
If I recall correctly, that the actual approval of this license to operate the dispensary occurred in 2019 or early 2020.
August 13th of
2019.
So I'm a business attorney that handles marijuana businesses. I wouldn't say the majority of my work, but a substantial part of my work concerns marijuana businesses. That's why I was ultimately hired to represent this company on these matters. And so I do this pretty routinely. Initially, from the minute State Question 78 passed, the law said that 75% of any licensed cannabis business has to be owned by an Oklahoma resident. But the 2-year residency statute had not been imposed until what was called the Unity Bill, which came in 2020. And that didn't become effective until sometime, I want to say like November 1st of 2020. So before November 1st of 2020, you still had to be an Oklahoma resident to obtain a license. But what that meant was you had to have an Oklahoma ID, an Oklahoma lease, or own Oklahoma residential property. And so it's the same things that you have to do now, but there wasn't a 2-year residency requirement until you could deem yourself in Oklahoma. So Mr. Burnett was one of those people that came to Oklahoma initially after the state question 78 passed. I don't know if he owns the property, if he leases the property, but he satisfied his Oklahoma residency pre-Unity Bill requirements and obtained his dispensary license. And then the law said, whenever Unity Bill was passed, that any of those persons that already had a license are grandfathered in. That even if they haven't been here 2 years, we're not going to take away their business license, because then you get into a lot of hairy lawsuits that the state will become involved in. So Mr. Burnett does not presently live in Oklahoma. He does satisfy Oklahoma's requirements, though. He has since basically August of 2019. So if he wanted to buy a second, dispensary license, I think he would have serious questions, or there would be serious questions concerning, do you satisfy this 2-year residency rule? But it's, it's not even really in question whether he does as concerns this dispensary, because it's been there since pre.
One other thing I would like to bring up that I think needs to be considered is the amount of parking that they have, and if they have enough parking to represent the type of business that they are without overflowing into the other business areas around them. That they need a certain, I don't know how many they need to have, but I think they have maybe 10. So just.
Mr. Chairman, I think related to the actual application as well, the application as presented in July and then brought back is saying review the uses of beer, tavern, nightclub or bar, which is a place of business that would have the serving or selling of food items as secondary or limited activity accounting to less than 50% of the combined. And what the applicant is presenting tonight is opposite of that, saying that you're going to have a restaurant. And so, I don't know, Mr. Love, I'm not sure even if, right now we've got before us reviewing the use of the nightclub or bar, and that's not even really what this applicant is presenting.
Well, they had dancing, they had live music at one time too, and that person that represented it, he stated that. So it was live music, it was dancing, you even said live music once.
There might be maybe a few nights of live music, but that's not the case here. We're not operating as a nightclub. There's not going to be loud music every night. It's going to be more friendly, family-friendly place. The kitchen will be all vegan, but yet customers or patients could still come to the dispensary for purchase. I do, about his question with the door to be closed off, so I know that the recreational bill could possibly pass soon. And with that, in other states, there is a rule that you're required to go in one door and then exit out another.
You gotta have two doors.
So that's why we have that exit door, so customers could go outside and then exit out that patio door. But the patio door is also an entrance for the restaurant as well too.
But we don't have that law passed right now, and that really doesn't do us any good right now. So that's an issue there. But then again, Mr. Long was saying, we've got help me out there with the.
I don't know, Matt, what do we want to call, I mean, we've
got an application for.
We've got an
a nightclub.
application.
We don't have an application for a
advertising
restaurant.
for the public hearing for a nightclub or bar, which is now, which was, I believe what they were applying, and I believe in July, that's what you were applying, or
He was
the
applying
entities
for.
were applying for. That's not what you're applying for here, so now we've,
So I guess one way to cut through this is there currently an ABLE license?
Yes,
And who holds the ABLE license?
OK Culture.
Okay. And I don't know, I remember in the old alcohol laws, when I was doing some work for ABLE, that they had distinction between type 1 and type 2 establishments. Then they did the modernization of the alcohol laws, and I know that ABLE still distinguishes between mixed beverage licensees that have the primary purpose for the sale of alcohol versus mixed beverage licensees that don't have a primary purpose for the sale of alcohol, which I believe they define as, like we do, 50% or more. I know from July that the ABLE Commission was taking a look at the operation there. Where does everything stand with ABLE right now?
The license was just renewed with the ABLE Commission. It's in good standing as far as I know.
Okay.
I don't remember his name from the health department, but he came by and did an inspection on the
Bless you.
kitchen and renewed the health department license under OK Culture as well too.
Okay, so the licensing has been switched over to OK Culture.
It's been switched over to OK Culture.
And will Beatbox is going to be selling the food?
Yes.
And Beatbox would be the one paying sales tax. I mean, it would be I don't know what their LLC name is, but that's going to be a separate corporation. Will Beatbox employees be selling the alcohol, or so it'll just be OK Culture employees selling the alcohol? What will OK Culture be selling other than alcohol?
I'm sorry.
What will OK Culture be selling other than alcohol?
Smoothies and coffee. Coffee smoothies and coffee.
And I will profess my ignorance on this. I don't know how the ABLE rules would look at essentially one site that has two separate companies that are one selling alcohol and smoothies, one that's selling food. If the alcohol smoothie company is subject to that 50% rule on the alcohol smoothie sales, not counting the Beatbox sales. I mean, if this were just Beatbox coming before us and there wasn't alcohol, it would be different. If it was Beatbox coming before us and Beatbox was selling the alcohol, that might create a difference. But honestly, I don't know how ABLE treats a situation like this, where essentially you're going to have one unit with two separate corporations selling, one selling food, one selling alcohol. And that's something I can follow up with ABLE tomorrow on to figure out how they treat it.
Well, if that's the case, OK Culture, then maybe it is worded correctly, because then they are only selling, or they're selling over 50% alcohol.
Well, and that's where I need to get with ABLE's general counsel tomorrow, just to get a sense of, in a situation like this, and I know we're seeing more of these pop up, there's all sorts of different locations which have multiple vendors that sell food all at one location, common eating area, but different companies that are selling food, some of which sell alcohol. I just don't know how ABLE views those. I mean, it's the laws have changed so much over the last several years, and as has people do business. So I want to confirm that with ABLE. The reality is, if it was all OK Culture, selling the food, selling the alcohol, and the actual sales, and this was part of the issue, is I'm not sure, Mr. Weatherburn, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't know personally, but I get the impression that maybe there were some sales going on that weren't getting reported, and weren't resulting in, and that's why ABLE was taking a look at the business. I say as prosecutor, where I'm prosecutor of the village, that's never a good thing if either the police or a regulatory agency knows your name, and they definitely, when we reached out to get some guidance in July, they knew exactly who LA Street Cuisine was, which is never a good thing. Frankly, I do like that, at least from my standpoint, that it's a new company, new people coming in, doing this. There's just some issues that we need to get flushed out. But if it turns out that this is something that this operation would be recognized as being fine, as long as the Beatbox sales plus the smoothie sales and coffee sales are not more than 50%, it wouldn't have to come before us. What that would mean, though, is that if you didn't get this kind of an approval from us, if it ever tiptoed over, then you'd be out of compliance. So.
You don't plan on alcohol sales being more than food sales?
Their point is a little more nuanced, though. They're saying from ultra standpoint, its sales are perhaps maybe 90% alcohol. which I think is a point very well taken. I was gonna ask, is it appropriate for us, would the council allow us to just essentially amend the existing application and represent it? Or table this to the December meeting and then represent new floor plans and more information? Or do we need to start from scratch here?
If you were coming to us saying, you know what, throw this whole thing out, we're going to do something completely different at this location, we'd say, okay, time for a new application. Since we're talking about tweaking an application that's on file, my recommendation to the commission, after they close the public hearing, would be that they do exactly what they did with the last applicant, although in that case, it's probably going to be deemed moot by the time we come back. This one wouldn't, would be that we table it to the next month's meeting, like I told the last applicant. If that's what occurs here, you wouldn't need to appear at the council meeting. It would be on the council agenda, but by ordinance, the council can't do anything until the commission sends them a recommendation. So I'd be recommending to the council that they also table it. And part of the reason that we do that is because we give notice of public hearings. It's so that the public can come if they want to. Anybody who comes to the council meeting would hear the public hearing for council is going to be pushed to December. And so essentially it would all get pushed, city council and commission would get pushed to December, if that's what the commission wants to do. And then at that point, you'd want to get with those guys over there to figure out when they would need to get any revised, anything else you're going to submit, that they would have a deadline that they need you to get it to them so that they can include it in the packet that the commission would get.
On behalf of the applicant, I would request that the commission table this and allow us to opportunity to work with your staff to move this forward next month. I wish I had business cards and Ms. Richardson did. I prepared some of my content info I can share with you, Mr. Love.
That
That's
works.
okay, and you can reach out to me after you talk to Abel, and we can talk about this throughout the next several weeks.
Sure.
I've also prepared 2 copies of Ms. Richardson's direct number for members of the community. That way they can literally call her if something becomes problematic before then. That's what I would request. The commission will make its findings, but we'd appreciate that on behalf of the company.
Mr. Chairman, obviously, I would recommend, unless there's anybody else from the public that wants to be heard, although with what I'm about to be said, that might address it. My recommendation would be that you have a motion to close the public hearing, and then a motion to table it to the next meeting. We've never really talked about this before, but what would be on the next meeting agenda would be identical to what the language that was on before you today, which would mean that you could have another public hearing at the next month's meeting.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to.
Or you could reopen the public hearing at that meeting.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Anyone else like to speak for the community? No? Okay. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Schiff,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Spriggs.
Yes.
Can I ask who seconded? Thank you. Motion passed.
Okay, and then entertain a motion to table this item on the agenda until December.
I'll make a motion, we table it till December.
I second it.
Adams,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Schiff,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Spriggs.
Yes.
Motion passed.
And just so you know that our meetings, commission's always the second Tuesday of the month, city council's always the third Tuesday of the month, so that would put it at December 13th, Tuesday, December 13th at 7 o'clock. And then city council will be the 20th at 6 o'clock.
Okay, if we
Oh, you're
don't
good.
have any more comments from
Thank you.
commission members,
You have,
we have to take a motion to adjourn, correct?
Okay, if you, no questions or comments from the audience? Comments from the staff? You are the chair.
Okay, do we have any,
You are the chair.
okay,
Jump wherever you want to.
any questions or comments from the audience? If not, any question or comments from the staff?
No, sir.
Any question or comments from commission members? Okay. And we have to make the motion to adjourn? Or do we just?
I'm glad that you asked that. There is nothing that says that you have to have a formal motion to adjourn. The chair can simply declare the meeting adjourned, and obviously if the majority of the public body disagreed, they could continue and the vice chair could take over.
Okay.
But what I've seen many mayors and planning commission chairmen do is that if there's no objection, we'll declare the meeting adjourned.
Okay. If there's no objections, then we'll declare it adjourned.